Welcome back to the show. Russ Evans with you. Golf Exchange presented by the Honda Classic as we make our way towards 11 o'clock this morning. And joining us now on the line is PGA professional Dave Wedzik, Medicus Golf Executive Director of Instruction. He's also based up in Erie, Pennsylvania at the Golf Evolution Academy. And Medicus has come out with Pure Strike, 5 simple keys to consistency. Good morning to you, Dave. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Russ. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So before we go one by one through each specific key, 5 simple keys to consistency, Medicus Golf revealing these keys to pure and consistent ball striking. Just tell me about the concept behind the 5 keys and how did you come about this?
Yeah, I'd love to. This is something, the instruction part of it goes back for me quite a while, and I've been, I got to say I've been teaching golf, basically this way for a long time, and it was when the founder of Medicus, Bob Koch, came to me and he says, hey, we love the way you're doing things. You're getting so many results from your students. What's this all about? How are you doing it? What do you do differently? And we started, looking at it more closely, and what we came to find out is that in general, golf instruction has been focused in all probably the wrong places, I guess I'd say, and I don't mean that as far as not every golf instructor, but overall when we ask golfers or media at a clinic or anything else, when we ask golfers what are the important things, what are the really important things that a golf instructor should be focusing on them with, what are the things that are important when they see it in a magazine they should pay attention to, what are the things that really matter to their game, the things that really matter aren't the answers we get. We get answers like we hear grip, we hear posture, we hear alignment, we hear slow takeaway, we hear tempo, we hear all these things. And Russ, the interesting part of that is that those things turn out to be the biggest variables in the game. And teaching golf or learning to play golf based on just those variable things makes the whole game tougher. So what we did is we kind of devised a system where we looked at basically what went to science and looked at kind of the science of classification, and we kind of said, look, what are the things that over, say, the last even 100 years, the best players have all had in common? What are the things that they all do in common? Not a few of them, not guys, playing well right now. Hundreds of hours of videotape watch, thousands of players. What are those things? And really interestingly, we found out there's just not very many of them. Quite literally, we found 5. And they're not even things like impact is always the same. It's maybe even certain portions of impact. And so the cool thing here is that, rather than talking about, hey, you should grip the club like a tour player, where my question to somebody is always, well, which tour player? Do I go Paul Azinger's grip or do I go, Ben Hogan's grip, which are 2 completely different grips? Or do I set up, do I set up like Craig Stadler or do I set up like Adam Scott? We start with only the things that these great players have in common, and then people know where to focus to get better, and they get better quicker.
David Wedzik, PGA professional, former Nationwide Tour pro, and Medicus Golf Executive Director of Instruction, joining me here. Russ Evans with you, Golf Exchange presented by the Honda Classic, and we're discussing Pure Strike, the 5 simple keys to consistency. Medicus Golf revealing these 5 keys, which will lead to pure and consistent ball striking. So these are all 5 keys that are present in almost every single world-class golfer, correct, David?
Yeah, virtually every one. There's nothing. I mean, it's really difficult to, and you said it. You said it right. Almost every. I mean, it's very difficult to find things that are 100% across the board. You can always, but boy, I can say 98, 99%, and some of these things 100%. It's pretty much they're pretty much there in all of them.
All right. So what is key number 1?
So we start, Russ, with key number 1 being, and our term for this is we like to try to keep these simple. Steady head. And all we're trying to say here is that the head is not moving around a whole lot, if any, during the golf swing, and that makes it simpler to play golf. And basically when the ball's laying on the ground, if you need to hit the ground in front of the ball, it's a lot easier to keep your head fairly steady than it is to move it around. Our data shows that the average tour player is moving their head less than an inch during the golf swing motion back and forth. Taking that a step further, I know of nobody at an amateur level or a professional level actually working on moving their head back and forth. It would be like the most chaotic way to play. Try to move your head all over and actually, try to hit the ball solidly. So all we try to explain is that just like Jack Grout used to hold Jack Nicklaus's hair, that we're just trying to keep the head relatively steady throughout the motion to make the whole process simpler from start to finish, and we're seeing it in all the best players. The head is relatively very steady in those players.
So we start with steady head as the first key principle, and then we move on to number 2, which is what?
Number 2 is weight forward. So we've got a head that's staying steady. And again, going back to the data, everything we've studied, everything we've researched has said that the best players in the world are playing with somewhere between 80 to 95% of their weight forward or on the forward leg, left leg for a right-handed player, at impact. So they're pressing into the ground. They're using the ground not only for power, but they've got this weight and their pressure on that forward leg, again, because they know that it's the best way to hit the ball far, but it's also the best way, with the ball, on the ground sometimes. It's the best way to be sure and hit the ball first then the ground, and even with the ball on a tee, it's placed more forward in the ball position. So these players are actually sliding their hips forward. They're putting weight onto the forward leg, and they're all arriving at impact with the huge majority of their weight forward.
And you mentioned a word that I've always heard is a bad word in golf, and that's slide. And I've always heard that turning around the torso is the way to play. You don't want to slide from back to front, but you mentioned the term sliding as a way to get your weight forward. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I mentioned it for a reason. I like the fact that people think of it that way because it is heard too often as a dirty word. Again, just purely looking at the data, or I asked people listening, watch golf on TV, rewind your TiVo units, look on YouTube. These players are all sliding their hips forward as they go into the rotational motion. So there's certainly rotational forces. There's definitely turning going on. But going all the way back, I love to use Ben Hogan as an example. He was one of the best sliders in the history of the game. I mean, he'd move his hips, depending on the shot, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches forward as he got started, and it was a key for him. And again, as long as you're not sliding your hips just straight forward and never picking up any of the rotational, sliding is a great thing. And the whole golf swing works on this kind of circular arc, and it's just as you're sliding, you keep turning and sliding at the same time, but it definitely starts with a slide.
Russ Evans with you, Golf Exchange presented by the Honda Classic, and we're joined on the line by David Wedzik, PGA professional, Medicus Golf Executive Director of Instruction. He's based up in Erie, Pennsylvania at the Golf Evolution Academy, and Medicus Golf has revealed the 5 keys to pure and consistent ball striking. We're going through the keys right now. More information at the website, www.purestrike.com. We've talked about key number 1, steady head. The second key is weight forward, and the third key, and this is referring to a right-handed player, and that's a flat left wrist.
Yeah, and we looked at quite a few different terms, but it is referring to a right-handed player. Thanks for mentioning that. And it's a flat left wrist. And what it's basically saying is that, and these keys do all build together quite nicely, but what it's basically saying is if we've got a chance to we made this golf swing and our head is pretty steady and our weight is forward, we have found that it's the left wrist being flat at impact is a very, again, measurable component of all the best players that have ever played the game. And the best way I can explain flat left wrist here would be to tell everybody out there listening that the left arm, or especially the left forearm, and the club shaft are lined up at impact. They're in a line at impact. That's where the most speed is created when those lever systems are reaching the inline condition. And that's basically, what we're talking about, especially because, if we've got people with certain grip conditions, I always like a Fred Couples, for example, who plays with sort of a strong, almost cupped grip cupped left wrist at setup. His left wrist may not be technically flat when he returns to impact, but his club shaft and his left arm are perfectly in line. So the term is flat left wrist, but it basically stands for an inline condition of the left arm and club shaft at impact. And that is really important because it makes it, going back to hitting the ball first and then the ground, makes that the easiest. It's the maximum speed point when things reach their inline condition. And it goes back to the way the clubs are designed. We've got clubs that have anywhere from a tiny bit offset to lots of offset. The face is sitting back from the leading edge. They have loft, and as these clubs are leaned forward, so to speak, in this condition of where the left arm and the club shaft line up, that's the way the ball can be compressed and hit the most solidly. If the club shaft is leaning backwards, we get lots of thin and fat hits. So it goes to hitting the ball really solidly.
You've got to hit down on the ball to make the ball go up. You've got to hit down to create loft and to create lift on the ball. And there's got to be a lean of the club shaft at impact. And is hands ahead of the ball at impact another way of saying this, or is that a different thing?
It's another way of saying it. There's so many ways to say it, so I think you'd be correct in saying that. But it's what happens sometimes is we get some confusion. Hands ahead of the ball, how far ahead of the ball? Should they be just ahead of the ball? Should they be way ahead of the ball? Most people out there, the feeling of having their hands ahead of the ball is a great thing. I would just ask people if they're working with their own instructor or they're videotaping their own swing or whatever, you're looking for a condition where that left arm and shaft are in line at impact. And honestly, if you're out there playing golf and hitting some fat and thin shots, you can generally expect that could be a pretty big problem for you. So that's a place to look.
Russ Evans with you. Golf Exchange presented by the Honda Classic. Joined on the line by David Wedzik, PGA professional, Medicus Golf Executive Director of Instruction. Medicus revealing the 5 keys to pure and consistent ball striking. Pure Strike is the name of the 5 keys. www.purestrike.com is the website for more information. We've covered the first 3. The first key, steady head. Number 2, weight forward. Number 3, flat wrist. A flat left wrist for a right-handed player. Before we get to keys 4 and 5, is this sequential in order, David?
It is sequential in order in the sense that each one helps build into the next. So if I had a golfer that, I had never picked up a club and we knew from the get-go, let's just say, that they weren't going to get any of these correct from the beginning, we could build a swing sequentially quite nicely doing this. All that said, it's not sequential in the sense of this is the order we work on it with students. My favorite term for this is some golfers get some of these things for free. And my point would be some guys are going to show up and their head's going to be steady, their weight's going to be somewhat forward, but say their left wrist's going to be not going to be flat. And so we prioritize based on the key that matters most for that person. It makes it easiest on the instructor that way. So sequentially in some ways, but not necessarily in an order of how we fix a student.
Okay, so if you're working with a student on these 5 keys, the very first thing you would do when they first show up, I would imagine, would be analyze their game and figure out which of these 5 keys they've already got down pretty good.
That'd be exactly right. The first thing we would do is, number 1, I started asking them a lot of questions. We want to find out. I can tell a lot just by them telling me what their awful shot is and then what their normal good shot is. I can learn a lot from that. Handicap level tells me a lot. Literally, the fact that somebody is a 20, let's say a 20 handicap. In general, you will know more where to look within these keys than you might for somebody who's a 1 handicap. But then we're going to shoot video. We're going to look, and then we're going to, again, boom, here they are. Here's the things we're looking for. Here's what your ball's doing, and it tells the instructor exactly where to look.
So key number 4 is sweet spot path.
Yeah, and sweet spot path, when it gets explained in a little more detail, the term we like is diagonal sweet spot path. And basically what we're talking about here is that the golf club is swung on an angle into the ball. And when I say an angle, I mean if a person imagines the target line going straight out to the target, so that's a straight line, the image should never be of the club being swung straight up and down that target line or straight into the ball, because we don't happen to have the luxury of playing golf on a perfectly vertical plane. So, the way we explain it, say, in a clinic is if it was a croquet mallet and we were standing right next to the golf ball, we could swing that club straight up and down a line, just like a Ferris wheel, and hit the ball straight, so to speak, or hit it solidly. In this case, everyone knows that we play golf with these clubs that are bent, right? So we've got to stand on the side of the ball, and we've got bent clubs, which makes the plane, which lays the whole plane down a little bit. It makes it more inclined. So because it's inclined, it presents a little bit of an arcing situation to it. And that in itself, again, we like things that can be proven and verified. So that in itself tells us that the sweet spot of the club has to be swung from in to out somewhat, or diagonally out to that golf ball. Now, we can move our aims and aim more left or aim more right, and The question we get sometimes is, well, what about faders? I don't think they can't be hitting in to out in the golf ball. Good faders are still hitting somewhat in to out into the golf ball, or somewhat of a diagonal sweet spot path. And they just understand how to control other things and with their alignments and things like that to make the ball fade. But Ben Hogan, one of the most famous faders of all time, I promise you, he was not swinging straight into the golf ball with the club traveling straight up and down the target line for any more than just an instant. That club was traveling inward or outward at the golf ball for a right-handed player, right? It was traveling down and outward. It hit the golf ball, and then it released itself off the target line again. So the important thing to note is that get rid of the image of a golf club being swung straight up and down the target line, and consider that it comes inward on the backswing and then goes back outward on the downswing.
This makes sense to me because I realize the golf swing is a circle. So when you're before impact, the club is moving on that line of that circle towards the moment of impact, and basically the circle touches the aim line for only a split second at impact. And before impact, the circle moves away from that line and on a diagonal kind of where the club is, and it's gets very difficult to understand if you're just talking about it. Drawing a picture of it is a lot more easier to understand.
Yeah, it is.
But for radio purposes, we only can talk about it. But basically, it's a diagonal along that line of the circle of the swing, moving from inside to out towards the ball, towards impact, and then after impact, it moves back on that circle line around the body. And so let me ask you this. In order to hit different types of shots, so the line of aiming, the aiming line or the target line, to hit a draw, you would line up a little bit close to that line, swing the line from inside to out, and then close the club face and impact, correct?
You would have to have the club face close to that path. And we'll get into this a little more in the fifth key, but yes, you would have to have the club face close to that path. So you would have your lines exactly like you said, slightly more to the right, and you would have to have your club face close to that path to make the ball draw. Vice versa, if you were going to fade the ball, you'd have your lines aimed up slightly to the left, and you'd have to have the club face open to the path to make the ball fade. So open to the path is going to make the ball fade, close to the path is going to make the ball draw. And again, we're going to get to touch on this in the fifth key, so I think it'll make a little bit more sense there.
All right, well, the fifth key is club face control, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, so we got the little start there, and basically what club face control is that once let's just say a great golfer has understood they have to do these four keys, and they're accomplishing these first four keys, and they've got everything going really well, they have to understand not only have they hit the golf ball solidly, but they have to make it curve, either fly dead straight or curve to their intended target. So the first example I use here all the time is that the guys on the PGA Tour, the best players in the world, understand club face control better than anyone else in the world, and that's why we call it a commonality. But even as good as those guys understand it, they still don't get it perfect every week. So the guys that are winning are doing it better usually than the guys that are losing that week. And here's where this all has to start. First thing comes down to what things like TrackMan and FlightScope and these ball launch monitors are starting to tell us, again, going back to the data, and that's that the initial direction of the golf ball, when it's struck, is governed mostly by where the face is pointing. So the best example there is to say that if I want the ball to start to the right of my intended target, the face has to be pointing slightly to the right of my intended target when it hits the ball. A path does have some influence, but not a whole lot, and it's mostly face. It's a pretty much a collision model with a spherical object, and that's just what it says. Taking that at the other side of it, if I've got a target and I want my ball to start to the left of that target, my face has to aim slightly to the left of that target. That's that simple. Just kind of keep that in mind, that the face governs the initial direction much more than the path. And for the purposes of playing golf, just kind of consider that is what governs the initial direction.
Interesting. So the 5 keys, the Pure Strike 5 simple keys to consistency. We started with steady head. Number 2 was weight forward. Number 3, flat left wrist. Number 4, sweet spot path. And the 5th and final key, club face control. For more information, www.purestrike.com. David, I really buy into this stuff quite a bit. I know that a lot of these principles are very important to hitting the ball consistently. What would be your advice to a listener or to a player that wants to get better? Must they come see a Medicus professional that focuses on Pure Strike, or can they do this at home on their own?
I would always suggest that they find one of our guys who are accredited instructors in the Pure Strike in the Pure Strike and the 5 Simple Keys system at some point. I think that that's the best way to start and the best way to get better is to work with one of these instructors. And, whether it's a fairly regular basis or a regular basis, the instructor can tell you that. But the important thing is it gives you a set of eyes and they know where to focus. All that said, though, we've got a great DVD set coming out. We've got great information online. We've got a lot of options there. And even if a golfer out there can't visit one of our instructors somewhere, focusing their practice time within these 5 keys. And the toughest part is finding out which of the keys you should be focusing on. Again, which ones you get for free and which ones you don't. But if you can solve some of that, absolutely focus your practice time within these 5 keys. Don't spend so much time, you hear so much and they hit a bad shot. Oh, I got quick. Most likely, tempo didn't change in that situation. I've done a lot of research on this. It's rarely not those kind of things. It boils down to these 5 keys. Again, the common things. Focus the time on the common things that the best players have in common, not the variables. People will get better faster, and that's definitely the way to go.
The Medicus Golf Pure Strike Keys to Consistency are principles that can help all golfers hit the ball with repeated accuracy and steady distance, which, of course, leads to better scores. Again, the website is www.purestrike.com. David, other ways for individuals to get in touch with Pure Strike and learn more about this?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, check out our Facebook group. I know lots of people out there on Facebook. It's just 5, the digit 5, Simple Keys on Facebook. Search that. It's a great group, lots of information. Lots of our instructors are on there sharing information, and that's where we'll be announcing new things upcoming, too.
All right. He is David Wedzik, PGA professional, former Nationwide Tour Pro, and he is the Medicus Golf Executive Director of Instruction. Pure Strike, 5 simple keys to consistency. Good stuff, David. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Russ.